Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Between Two Studs. I'm Alex Stud.
And I'm Ron Stud.
Ron, it's episode 13. Lucky 13.
Lucky 13.
And I feel like what better for people who even believe in luck than to be talking with someone who's in the world of psychiatry. In the world of
psychoanalysis? Psychometry?
Psychology. You numbnuts.
Psychology.
Psychology.
I've only been doing it for 20 years.
You know, and it's sad because I've known you for over 20 years too. So the world of psychology.
Psychogeology.
Psychogeology.
I like it.
Got it.
I like that. So we're gonna be sitting on the metaphorical couch today. Although I don't know if that's offensive or not, but we're gonna be sitting on the metaphorical couch today with our wonderful friend and guest, Dr. Drew Burkley. How you doing today?
Doing just fine, Mr. Stud. How about yourselves?
Doing very good. We're excited to have you on. Yeah, I mean,
I'm very excited to be here.
I think we should probably get to know you best through our fire round. So with that, let's kick this off. Drew, how do you know us?
Well, when in January 2001, I was waiting for my father to pick me up from play practice, and there was this odd-looking tall person making crazy faces and noises by the telephone. Clearly Alex, because he was a senior in high school at that point. And I said, this fella's kind of interesting. And thus I became friends with the one Ron Stud.
Oh, yeah.
And it was fabulous. And Ron and I hit it off pretty good. And I found out he was not too far up the
highway.
Up the highway from me, just right on the other side of the bridge. I was right below the bridge in lower Delaware. And Ron never let me forget that as long as I was beneath him. In the geographically, if you want to talk psychogeographically, I was below you in that sense. Went to high school together, ended up going to college together. I did my things in Philadelphia, came down south, and wouldn't you know, he came down south too. It's just like he just seems to follow me. And I got to know you, Alex, when you were a bit nothing but a wee studling.
That's true. I think I was 9 or 10.
You were in third grade at Cedar Lane Elementary School is where you were.
It's true. It's true. Wow. So I was not that description as the tall guy Ron was back then.
You were a couple heads shorter than Ron, but you were referred to as his mini-me. I remember that distinctly. You were called Ron's mini-me.
Yes, I was. And to this day, I still am. What I think is interesting about that whole saga of how you two met is, Drew, keep me honest, but you grew up and spent your whole life in Middletown, Delaware, right? Like you went through the K through 12 system through Appoquinimink School District.
I will have to correct you on that. I didn't get into the Appoquinimink School District till 5th grade. I was actually born in Iowa, and then moved to Ohio, and then moved to Delaware.
Okay, but at least 5th grade on.
5th grade on, yes. So
here you are. It's like by the time you rolled into late high school, right? Like you know the cast of characters at Middletown High School. Mm-hmm. And Ron did something very unusual, which is transferring high schools going into his senior year.
A terribly hard thing to do because I know how close he was with Brandon. I didn't know it at the time, but I know now, and that's a hard thing to do, being in the position I am as a child psychologist, knowing that you have yourself established, you have friends, you have relationships and dynamics of the high school you're at, you know the lay of the land, you're getting ready to move on to the next phase of your identity, and here you have to up and move and recreate yourself. And that's a really hard thing for someone to do. And even more so, now you have to find a way to fit in with a social group.
But he found you.
Well,
he found you.
Yes, but after 3 months of going through school. Now, he had already made a name for himself as the Ron. He had a posse already. I kind of joined in his posse. There's drama in my old posse, thanks to relationships that fizzled out and drama that happened senior year and girlfriends / future wives that didn't come see you over the summer break. That was the right time for me to find a new posse for a little bit.
So you took us back a little down high school memory lane.
Yeah, good times.
And, we're obviously going to talk a lot about your career tonight, but we're really interested in learning about some of your interests as well, just like outside of work. Tell us about kind of your interests. I think you would describe yourself as a nerd, right?
Oh, totally.
In a positive way.
Ron, I'm a big tech nerd. I'm glad I get to use some of my hobby for my job too. Like I do like editing videos, and I get to do some of that with what I do at work. Ron has dubbed me the king of obsolete technology, mainly because, until recently I had.
Is that your title on your business card?
It should be. It should be on the small print underneath. It says king of obsolete technology. But I have him to thank for some of that, because I have a whole box of like IDE cables and ISA cards and PCI cards, not PCIe, PCI cards, and AGP graphics cards, and EDO RAM. It makes great keychains, by the way. EDO RAM does.
Drew is somebody who, normally there's a lot of places that do collections for people of the world, and usually most people would assume after 10 to 15 years it's not even worth like taking to like a Goodwill or Salvation Army. Drew is the perfect candidate. He will take something like that and he will find a use for it. And
so we're going to talk about some gaming a little bit later, which we just kind of alluded to. But you also are a fan of Japanese cartoons as well, right?
Yeah, the Japanimation, if you will. Yes, Ron. So everybody needs a friend like Ron. Ron got me into that when I was in college. In fact, I consider myself to be a good student, but the semester he introduced me to Ranma 1/2 was my lowest scoring semester in my entire college career. I had B's and C's that semester, and it's because I got hooked on Ranma 1/2 and would watch that instead of studying, thinking I can just be like Ron and do this test without. No, I can't.
And Drew's parents still hold it against me. They're like, "You won't believe what he told us. He told us that semester it was because you gave him this anime stuff." I'm kidding.
No, they don't. They love Ronstead. No, that was my lowest scoring semester. Happy to say, though, I did finish the entire season within that semester, so it didn't carry over to the first semester of my sophomore year. But it did do a number on me for a while.
Have you watched that show in the last few years? I guess what I mean, and I'm curious, is the world has very much changed. The main character for the listener is a character that goes through sex changes back and forth between man and female quite frequently, multiple times, sometimes within a single episode. Have you watched that show in the last couple of years?
Yeah.
And has it given you like a totally different perspective than when that show came out in the 1990s?
I think a perspective in how? Are you talking about culturally, or are you talking about having
the way I would say the way we probably view like gender?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm asking.
Gender fluidity. Yes. Well, I have not watched it since the Me Too movement, and I've not watched it since kind of gender. Our transgender friends have always been with us, but recently, in the past couple of years, there's been more debate about it than I think is necessary. That's a whole other topic we can talk about, is gender fluidity and equity and being non-binary. I have not watched it more in that push. I have watched it. I watched it, I think, last episode about 3 years ago, and that was not hitting me as far as the gender fluidity of the character. But I do think it gives a good representation. We all have what we consider typical masculine and feminine traits about us, and the character Ron 1/2 is no different. In fact, there's a couple episodes where he's seen eating ice cream that would be typically reserved for females in Japan. And he says, I can't be a boy and eat this stuff. And so he transforms into a girl so he can eat it and not have shame. And so I think that goes to show that even in the 1990s and 1980s, there's this idea that men wanted to do these things, but they couldn't because they weren't female or because they'd be seen as unmasculine.
Are you saying, I mean, obviously you haven't seen it in several years, but you're sort of you're making the argument that it was pretty progressive for its time in many ways, and there's a lot of things that it would hold up today. I guess I was curious. I haven't seen that show since I was a kid. Which I don't know.
My God,
I don't know if I should have been watching that show when I was a kid, but I did, and I haven't watched the show any time.
What I think it goes to show is that the fights that we're fighting now have always been there. And the world's not getting worse; it's just getting more accepting and understanding that we should not be judging somebody based on their likes, whether they're male or female, or masculine or feminine, or whether they're a real man or whatever they choose to be identify as. I think what it goes to show is that we should be able to like the things we like and enjoy the things we enjoy without having to fear if this is making us look one way or the other towards a gender. I think that's what I'd get from that.
Well, that's wonderfully said. And speaking of things that we enjoy, what are you currently drinking?
Well, I was going to be drinking some Buffalo Trace, but my good friend Ron here will be joining me tomorrow, and so I wanted to make sure I had some. And so when I was searching through the bottom drawer of my fridge, I found the last lonely bottle of a delicious Yingling Hershey's chocolate porter, which is fabulous.
I was going to ask, how wonderful is it?
You get all the notes. Tell that it's a Yingling beer in there. You can taste the dark hints of the chocolate. It's a nice dark chocolate. It's very smooth as it's going down. It's a perfect pairing of two Pennsylvania companies.
Well, when I heard the announcement, I that's what got me excited. I was like, that's cool that two Pennsylvania companies are like joining forces to create a unique beverage. So I have yet to have it. When I was in Pennsylvania last, I was looking for it and I couldn't find it. Mm-hmm. Hopefully I'll try it soon.
Tennessee is one of the few southern places, and maybe Georgia now. Well, Florida for sure. I'm not sure about Georgia. I'm sure Georgia does Yingling, but not all places get Yingling. And so when I decided to move to Tennessee, I had not checked that out. And so my supervisor at my pre-doctoral internship, we were all done and everything. We were having a go-away party, and she bought me a 24-pack of Yingling just in case Yingling was not available in Tennessee. So that was very sweet of her, but I was very glad to see that there's Yingling because that was by far the beer I was brought up on. If I was to say I was brought up by a beer, it's be Yingling.
And Ron, what are you drinking on this fine evening?
So on this evening, I'm drinking Rebel Distillers Collection bourbon whiskey. This is a Kentucky Straight single barrel. Got it from my local liquor store. And I have to say, it's very, very tasty. It's got a lot of kind of I don't know, like it almost has a little bit of like raisin, a little bit of hint of cinnamon. It's definitely got some of the oakiness on it. Almost in some ways, it tastes like if you mix maybe a bit of a spiced rum with a little bit of whiskey. I don't know where all the spice is coming from, but it's very complimentary. It tastes really nice. So what are you drinking, Alex?
Well, I tried to think about what drink I was going to have tonight, and I wanted to have a drink that sort of pays homage to Drew Burkley here, who lives in Tennessee. So I do have, and I've drank this once before on this show, Chattanooga whiskey rye. And obviously Chattanooga is just down the road, maybe an hour and 20 minutes from where you hail?
About 2 hours.
2 hours. Okay, close enough.
It's halfway between me and Ron.
Well, it is funny. You obviously know that area better. Both of you know that area better than me. But I do know that part of the country with the Smoky Mountains. I feel like the roads go really weird. Like I know when I was driving down from Chicago over Christmas to visit Ron, I felt like as we drove through Nashville and then cut over, and I felt like I went into Alabama, then I went in back into Tennessee, then I was in Georgia, yep. Then I was back in Tennessee again. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah. The engineers that put it together, they were certainly partaking in some of the shine and some other distilled products. So
Maryland is the only other messed up state in that regard. Maryland is made of the leftover parts that other states didn't want.
Well, that's how I've always described where Ron and I grew up living in Bear, Delaware. If you look at this,
Bear's all over the place.
What is Bear, Delaware?
It's here. It's there.
It's where you don't know.
It's whatever Newark and Wilmington didn't want.
Yeah. If you're somewhere in northern Delaware and you don't know which part you're in
in
Bear. That's all there is.
Is there even a post office?
And I've never seen,
or do you have to go to Newark to get to your post office?
I've never seen a welcome to Bear sign ever. I don't know where it is.
Who's on the Bear Town Council?
It's just this weird district. As far as I understand it, I think it's just a weird postal district where it's like it's there, but there's no city of it. Maybe there is a city, but there's no town hall. But yeah, anyway. All right. Drew, let's get to our last part of our fire round. So this is something that we ask all of our guests. And the question is, for all of our guests, everybody, certainly we all appreciate art, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we think is kind of interesting is hearing from, basically our guests, what is one single piece of art that you think defines you or represents you? And tell us about that.
Well, it's not a very well-known piece of art, except probably to you, Ron, and maybe Alex has seen it as well. But this was a question I gave some thought to. And it would have to be, because of the profession I'm in and the necessity of it, is at our college in Misericordia, they had an outdoor art exhibit, which was it was 4 slabs of stone, and each slab got progressively more defined as it went along. And by the end of it, they're supposed to be, supposed to symbolize you starting as a freshman and ending this well-defined character as a senior. But I always had a problem with that too, because just when you you think you graduate, you're a senior and so forth, it turns out you don't know crap. Right. And so now you go into this new world and you have to redefine yourself again, and you're being chiseled away by your mentors and by your supervisors. And I think that to a degree would speak to me, because you're always having to not reinvent yourself, always having to sharpen yourself. In fact, you'd think that when I did 13 years of psychology, right, I started my journey of psychology in 2001. I graduated in 2013. I should be freaking chiseled by this point. I don't know what happened. I got this belly instead of being ripped. But it turns out once you get into my field, after you're a fresh doctoral student or got your doctorate degree, you're an early career psychologist for the next 13 years. And the reason why they call you early career is because you don't know crap. And so we keep waiting and thinking that we're going to get to this point where we're well chiseled and defined and ready. But I don't think that point comes, especially in a world where you're constantly having to learn and be sharpened by those around you. And so to a degree, that's the art that I think represents me, but it's in perpetual motion, is that you think you're done, but you're continuing to have to refine and learn and grow. And with that comes hard knocks, failure, and getting yourself back up, and perseverance. And so that's what I think kind of defines my attitude.
I really like that, Drew. And this completes the fire round, which, Ron, I think we should rename this the Ember round, right? Is like the charcoals that slowly burn. Because these I love these early rounds, but these are not fire rounds.
No.
This is a much more discussion based. But Drew, you passed. You passed the fire/ember.
You made it.
Approved. I thought all of my credit cards did that.
So let's switch gears. I know you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but let's set the stage for people like me who really, when it comes to the world of psychology in general, I'm really lacking. Sure. I don't even know the difference, to be totally honest, between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. I don't even know how to spell the two.
Yeah,
so tell me the difference. Tell me the difference between the two, and which one are you?
Well, I am a psychologist. We'll put it off that way, in the state of Tennessee. And I'll tell you why I have to qualify that in a minute. But a psychiatrist is basically someone who has their medical doctorate and can prescribe drugs. Now, here's the fun stuff, and I'll try to be quick with this. Psychiatrists used to do what psychologists do, and psychologists only used to do testing. Okay? Like intelligence testing and things like that. But throughout the decades, there's been shifts, and medical doctors, because that's what Freud was. Freud was a medical doctor. He kind of started our profession. He thought that you had to have a doctorate of medicine to be able to understand the mind. But as times have shifted and things have shifted, psychiatrists started saying, why do we have to learn how to do therapy? This is for the birds. We just need to learn how to do medications because that's where things are going. And this is back in the 50s and 60s and so forth. And so then that's how my field became to do more therapy. And so we do a lot more therapy than we do assessments. But there are still psychologists that just do a lot of the assessments, like personality testing, intelligence testing, and things like that. It's still a very big part of my profession. But in the short of it, a psychiatrist prescribes medications. Some of them do therapy, but they go through, psychiatrists go through 4 years of med school and then do like a rotation for the next few years in a psychiatric institute. Whereas my entire career 4 years undergrad of psychology, 3 years master program of psychology, 5-year doctorate program in psychology, 1 year pre-doctoral internship in psychology, and then a year postdoc in psychology. So I have 13 years of just studying stinking psychology.
Now, would it be fair to consider yourself a therapist, or is that a whole different realm as well?
Nope, a therapist will refer to anybody who does psychological counseling. But you can't call yourself a psychologist unless you're licensed as a psychologist in that state. So just because I have a doctorate degree doesn't mean I'm a psychologist. In fact, if I were to go into Delaware and call myself a psychologist, I'd have to qualify it saying I'm a psychologist in Tennessee. Because unless you're licensed as a psychologist in Delaware, you can't call yourself a psychologist. And same thing in Pennsylvania or Maryland or West Virginia or Georgia.
So is there like an equivalent of a bar?
Yes.
For like every state?
Mm-hmm. We call it the EPPP. We have to take something called an EPPP, the examination in professional psychology preparedness or something like that. We have to get a certain score on it. We have to, some states make you do an oral exam in front of the board. We have to go through so many supervised hours after we get our doctorate. I have to go through a year of another internship and get 2 hours of supervision every week on my cases. Sit for a jurisprudence exam, which is basically the ethics and rules of the state that you're living in to make sure you know those. And then you get licensed and you're good to go from there.
Tell us what it is that you actually do.
Some psychologists do counseling, some do assessment, as I said, and you have to have in Tennessee, you have to have a bit of different qualifications. So I'm what's called a health services provider in Tennessee, which is an important thing for my line of work. Prior to about COVID, I worked part-time at Cherokee Health Systems, where I got to see patients and do therapy and things like that. And I work full-time, though, now and exclusively now at the University of Tennessee's Center of Excellence for Children in State Custody. Actually, it's University of Tennessee Graduate School of Medicine, Center of Excellence for Children in State Custody. We just call ourselves the COE. What we do there, and what I do, is I do a lot of training for other therapists in certain things. And community mental health centers can't usually afford good training because they take people who are on state medical insurance, and that doesn't pay very well. And so they can't afford to send their clinicians to be trained in these therapies because they cost about $5,000 or $6,000 for a person to be trained in a certain type of therapy. So we do it for them for free. And so that's what I do. I do a lot of training of therapists throughout the state of Tennessee in a type of therapy called parent-child interaction therapy. It's for kids under the age of 7. So I do a lot of that. I do some of the assessments. I do supervising of our postdoc. I do some research here and there with it. But that's what keeps me busy day in and day out.
You help children, and that's what
I help kiddos. I help kiddos get forever families. So that's what the rewarding part of my job is.
And kind of with that, how are children reacting to COVID? Mm-hmm. Or maybe what are the considerations for parents and adults that are working with children right now in light of COVID? That's
an excellent question. So as you know, I work a lot with the Department of Children's Services. And part of what DCS does is visitation with their parents. So when kids in state custody, a lot of times they still get visitation. And keep in mind, these are kids who are young kids, infants, babies, if you will, all the way up till 17, 18-year-olds. And so when COVID hit, they had to start doing everything virtually. And people knew how to do things virtually, but at the same time, they didn't know how. And so we all know how to click on a Zoom link. We know how to click on a Zoom link. We know how to talk to somebody and hopefully get our technology set so we can hear them. What do you do with a baby on a Zoom visit? Before, moms used to rock their babies and hold them and cuddle them and feed them. It's kind of hard to do that virtually. And so we kind of learned as we went. We came up with some recommendations that parents can do when they're visiting with their babies virtually. Some things that toddlers can do with their parents virtually, and ways to kind of can keep that relationship going, because it's almost not fair that a parent's supposed to gain a relationship and a bond with a baby that they can't see or touch. Or keep a relationship. They're going to be going back to this mom in 3 or 4 months. We want to be able to keep some kind of relationship there. And so we help disseminate information to the Department of Children's Services. These are things you can do to help keep a bond between baby and mama while you're having to do these virtual visits. You can't just sit down in a room with toys and expect the kid to hold the thing the whole time and say, "Hi, mommy." That's not typical for a 4 or 5-year-old. And so we had to come up with creative ways for them to do visitation and even therapy too. Oh goodness, whole new beast with doing therapy virtually. Again, trying to keep a 7 or 8-year-old in a room is different. Like when I'm doing therapy full time and I'm in a room with an 8-year-old, we're doing an activity or something like that, I can keep their attention because I can move my head around. We can do body movements. We can do jumping jacks. Virtually, that's a little harder for me to have room control. We have had to come up with new ways to keep kids occupied through interactive games or interactive things that we do through Zoom or through other methods. So it really took a learning curve there, but there are a lot of benefits that came with it too.
That's really interesting. I'm curious your take on this because we're coming up on about a year that COVID, has pretty much completely taken the world by and changed our lives forever. My wife had a theory very early on, like literally it was late March, early April. She was having this thought. She said, I wonder how young children who are really going through those pivotal years that are growing up during COVID, how they're going to adapt to not being able to really read people's faces because of the masks. One of the thoughts she had was she was wondering if these children or toddlers, right, will have to become much more perceptive of human reactions in other ways, whether it's the eyes or whether it's even reading your body. Has there been anything to that? Have you heard anything, or what's maybe your take on that?
It's not as concerning as far as their developmental abilities to read faces. The human brain is ingrained to look for faces and eye contact. So when we look for emotions and look at people for responses, we actually look more at their eyes than their mouth or their face. One of the tests they use for kiddos to see if they're on the autistic spectrum is actually where are the kids' eyes when they're looking at you. Kids on the spectrum who have difficulty interpreting emotions correctly often look at your nose and mouth, whereas kids who are developmentally appropriate are looking at your eyes and the top kind of frame there. So that's not that much concerning. Babies from very early on are looking for faces and like to look more at faces than they do any other objects. It's kind of almost ingrained that we look for faces and are good at it. So I don't think a break like that, even though in terms of COVID, it's going to cause any long-term damage. Also because they're seeing their parents without their masks on, they're having to read their parents' faces and things like that. Toddlers are looking at they don't make 3 and 4-year-olds wear masks oftentimes. Well, maybe 4-year-olds, but 3-year-olds usually aren't wearing masks, or 2 or 1-year-olds. And so they're being able to see other 1s and 2-year-olds' faces. And of course, their parents' faces when they're in there. But the idea of looking at a face is just so ingrained that I don't think seeing a mask is going to cause a significant change, especially for as hopeful short-term as this is.
That's really interesting. Well, Dr. Drew, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we're excited to talk a little bit more about your day-to-day, but we want to talk about video games.
Yes.
I want to talk about Star Wars. I want to talk about Star Trek. So we'll be right back with Dr. Drew.
If you're all the way through your last binged podcast and looking for something new, then Foundation Radio has you covered. Interviews, politics, beer drinking, pro wrestling, Dungeons & Dragons, we have something for everyone. Stream the new episodes every Tuesday wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You can find all of our archive at foundationradio.net. You can also follow us on Instagram at foundation_radio. Foundation Radio, something for everyone.
Hey listeners, it's Ron here. I wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about our newly launched website, twostuds.com. That's TWOSTUDDS.com. There you'll find blog entries and postings about all of our recent episodes, and you'll also be able to see how to get in touch with us and all sorts of other information about your favorite hosts, Ron and Alex Studd. We hope you'll check it out.
And welcome back. We're hanging out with Drew Burkley. So, Drew, last psychology question, and then we're going to get into some random video games and fandoms. But, I'm a big fan of Frasier. I've watched every single episode of Cheers. I've seen almost every episode of Frasier. To be honest with you, that is my knowledge of the world of psychology. That's what I know, right? I'm listening. And so it was announced a few weeks ago that Frasier is actually coming back to television next year in 2022. Yay or nay on Frasier Crane and his take and portrayal on psychology.
So, Alex Studd, I'm going to turn this back on you. You have learned a lot today about psychology. So, I'm going to ask you a question. Is Frasier a psychologist or a psychiatrist?
Well, this is an interesting question because I believe he is a medical doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So because he's a medical doctor, I assume he can prescribe. And so because of that, he would be a psychiatrist, right?
Yes.
I'm learning.
You are learning.
He
That's
can
right.
be
He is
taught.
a psychiatrist. So, in terms of who does actual therapy these days, even in Frasier's generation, you're going to have fewer psychiatrists that know the ins and outs of evidence-based therapy compared to that of a psychologist. So, one of the last episodes of Frasier, if you recall, is him sitting on a couch with the one fellow who passed away recently, the other comedian who was in everything. Oh, goodness gracious. Anyway, and they were taking turns analyzing each other, and they sat on the couch, and the other person was off to the side out of view, and they were talking about each other. That kind of psychology doesn't exist anymore. And so I have to say, Frasier, here we go, slight tangent. That kind of psychology was called psychoanalysis. And the reason why the psychiatrist was outside of the view is because if the person said, I can only have an orgasm when a rooster crows, they didn't want the psychologist's face to influence the person's free association with what was on their mind. Because if somebody said something like that, like, I can only smile when someone bashes my finger in, you might have a visceral reaction to that. But that would imply judgment on them, and then so they'd stop talking about it because they think you're judging them. So that's why in those scenes you see people sitting far back from where the person sees, and nobody does that anymore. So anyway,
but when that show was made, that was still a practice that was being done.
Nope.
Oh,
nope. Not really. Not by anybody who's mainstream. No. That died out in the 50s and 60s when behaviorism started coming into play.
So that is just straight up inaccurate.
Anytime you see somebody as an example of therapy that they're sitting on a couch and talking to somebody and they're laying down, that is no longer an example of how any modern therapy is done.
And it hasn't been in 60 years.
60 years plus.
Drew, is it fair to say, because the fact that you knew a specific episode in the last bit of that series, I get the impression you are a fan of the show, but you take zero stock in the actual science and psychology.
They will use things they'll use a lot of times they'll use big words or complicated explanations. Radio talk shows like Frasier's I'm Listening, which was a playoff of Joyce Brothers, who did that kind of stuff, has now morphed into things like Dr. Phil. Those kinds of things are not helpful, except unless you're saying to somebody, you have this kind of a difficulty, I hear you, that's a tough thing. I think you need to go see a therapist with this kind of a background and see him for this kind of therapy. And then you're only really helping the person if you say, hey, this is where you can get it. Otherwise, my problem with things like Frasier is you're exploiting people with personal problems in order to fit your pocket. You're having people talk about intimate things they might feel pressure to talk about on the radio that they might not otherwise say. And people think that you're generally going to help them. The sad part is shows like that generally don't help people. They really don't. But the way he did psychology, what he did, and what he said was not helpful. Because if I could get away with saying to somebody, you just need to do this, and if you do this, you're great, I wouldn't have a job. Because unfortunately, people don't change that easily. I'd be out of a job if a kid says, I say, bud, you're not doing your homework. And he says, oh, I just need to start doing my homework. Oh, problem solved. No, that's not how people change. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. And so the psychology is crap. It makes for good ratings. It makes for good radio shows. It makes for interesting radio shows. But it's not helpful to the person on the other end at large here.
All I can say is, I'm listening.
So, Drew, we're going to kind of
pivot away from this stuff.
We're going to pivot away, make a little shift. I know that you are very much into gaming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're specifically into a lot of retro games.
Yes.
What's your current retro game? And tell us what about it appeals to you?
What are we defining as retro? Like, is PS2 retro? I
would say I would say if you were asking me retro, I would say pre N64. Like I'm talking like 96 and earlier.
Okay, 96 and earlier, so pre N64. So we're talking about Super Nintendo generation and before that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So we can go through consoles, we can go through arcade games or computer games. So let's hit our consoles. My favorite retro console game is on the Atari Jaguar, which was the last console that Atari released. And it's a game called Zool 2, which is also available on the PC. And what I really liked about Zool 2 was it was a platform game, but not a linear platform game like you find with Mario. It was it was more like Sonic in that respect, but before Sonic, mind you.
How do you spell Zool?
Zool.
That's what killed me. I was like, that's the boss in Ghostbusters, Zool, and the Keymaster in that.
Zool 2. And so it's a game with a few different aspects, is that you have to collect these little candy things, and you have to collect so many so the timer doesn't run out. And so every time you collect one, it gives you, I think, a couple of seconds, and you have to collect so many by the time you reach the end. But if you get the end and you don't have enough, you have to go backwards and find out where you missed them before time runs out to finish the level. And so it's kind of like if in Mario, you had to collect so many coins before you could finish the level, but it was not a linear level. There were hidden places you had to find the coins, and your timer was running out. So that's what I like about it. It's a unique challenge. And the bosses are also interesting on how you defeat them. So, and I love some of the sound effects. They're great. Plays a little repetitive, but it's very interesting for the time it was at. Sake
of brevity, give me the best Super Nintendo game.
Ranma 1/2 RPG, because that's one of the few Super Nintendo games I've played. And in fact, that was actually the first Super Nintendo game I played. I did not have a Super Nintendo as a child, Alex Stud.
Who knew we were going to hit on Ranma 1/2 twice in this episode?
Right.
I played it as an emulator in college, the sophomore year or the spring year of my freshman year when I had the lowest history of grades. I played that RPG, and it was my first RPG I've played. I never played Final Fantasy or anything before that, and so that was my favorite SNES game. In fact, I think that's the only one on the SNES that I've played all the way through.
Huh. That's sad. You need to play Chrono Trigger. Just go back, finish that, and then we'll be done.
Let's kind of switch gears. What about modern gaming? I believe you have a Switch, right?
Yeah. Switch all the way. So name brand game that I like that everybody knows, Zelda Breath of the Wild, fabulous game, great sights, great kind of open world, almost a little too open.
Well, so let me have a follow up to that, because I'm sure you've heard the rumors about the upcoming Switch Pro. Mm-hmm. So it's the sequel to the Switch, which I hope they call the Super Nintendo Switch.
I heard about that. That's going to be a fabulous name for it.
I hope that's what they do. What are things that you'd like to see on this new system, other than just better graphics, and just an enhanced version? What are you hoping to see?
You ready for this? The better graphics aren't going to really concern me too much. And here's why. The TV I have back here, I have a nice setup. I have a really excellent setup. I got to send you a picture. A lot of time put into it. All the cables managed and everything.
We will post it on the blog, Drew.
Yes.
You send a picture, we'll post it.
Absolutely. So anyway, because I only have a 1080p back here. And the reason I have a 1080p is an old one is so I can hook up all the RCA connections from my retro consoles. Because newer TVs that are 4K don't have the inputs for it. But I know you can buy adapters, but it's not the same. So what I really hope I see is the Switch I have has the screen itself is not a very good quality screen. The color's not as vibrant. The screen's not as bright. And so I hope they have not just an improved display. And it would be nice if it was a 1080p display. It would be nice. So I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping for a greater storage capacity in it. I'm hoping what I'd love to see is you can have multiple cartridges in.
Are you hoping that it can accept floppy disks?
It would be great to have that, because then we'd be an additional storage medium there. And especially if you start getting to the zip disks. Now, if you get to a zip disk, dang, man.
Or jazz. You want some jazz drives in there?
I'd like to see them support Bluetooth audio for the headphones. That, I think, is something that's crazy, that as far as I know, I could be wrong about the new PS5 and so forth, but none of the modern consoles allow for Bluetooth connections for headphones. Am I wrong?
I don't know, but that seems crazy if true.
I think you're right, honestly.
It's absolutely crazy that they don't allow Bluetooth connections. It's terrible. So I really want the Switch to set the trend there and allow Bluetooth connection because it's there. There's a chip there. The darn controllers do wireless through Bluetooth. So the tech's there. They just need to enable it. And so I'd like to see the multiple cartridges. I'd like to see the Bluetooth. And so I want to see it powered to a point where we can have some modern ports. I don't care if it does 4K as much as I care. Can it handle if they do Fallout 5? Can it handle the new Rogue Squadron that's coming out for Star Wars? That's what I'd like to see pick up. I wouldn't mind them picking up some of the N64 titles. I wouldn't mind seeing Nintendo Switch Online do N64 because they have a Nintendo, they have Super Nintendo. Let's bring in the N64 here. Give me my Rogue Squadron on N64. That would be pretty nice to have.
Well, speaking of, you just listed a ton of Star Wars properties. Let's talk a little bit about your Star Wars fandom and specifically, like Star Wars is having a major rebirth right now, right? Between games, movies, TV shows. What are your thoughts on that?
I like it. I like that there's this zeitgeist back again with Star Wars being in the mainstream. I feel like when I was a kiddo and we'd like watch, I remember in 6th grade, we watched Empire Strikes Back. I'm like, oh, other people like this? Turns out not everybody did, but I thought I enjoyed it. I'm liking it. One part of my job, since I'm a child psychologist, is that it makes it easy for me to gain rapport with the kiddos because I have all the old Star Wars characters. And back when we were meeting in person, I'd bring them out and we'd play games and do things. There's no psychological interpretation. It's just that I got to play with Star Wars toys, get paid for it, and play with kids. It was fabulous. And so I'm glad that it's back in the mainstream, makes it easier to gain rapport. Love all the shows that they're having. I feel like they're really getting a chance, especially with all these streaming services, to explore different character arcs and backstory.
Drew, they're missing one thing. Seriously, I don't like Star Wars as much as you, but there's low-hanging fruit. Why have they not made a sequel to the Star Wars Holiday Special?
Yes.
They did. Didn't you see the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special?
No.
I didn't.
What?
It must have actually been good. That's probably why I didn't see it.
There is literally a Lego Star Wars Holiday Special, and they talk about Life Day.
Wow, I didn't know that. I was being facetious.
And I'm being serious. See, here's what happens when you be facetious. I'll turn it around on you. I have not watched it all the way through, but I hate to disappoint your fans. If you haven't seen it, Carrie Fisher does not sing lyrics to Star Wars, the main theme. She doesn't even make an appearance in it. It's all done Lego style. There's no terrible made-for-TV graphics and blue screen. It's pretty well done. It has a decent plot line, I think. I've not seen it all the way through, but there's a Lego Star Wars Holiday Special.
Quickly about the original Star Wars Holiday Special. do most fans consider it canon?
So no, it's no longer canon, and here's why.
It got it was, and then it got taken away.
No, none of. Okay, the only thing that's canon right now is episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and anything post Disney. Anything prior to that is called the Legends universe. So basically, all that work that all these authors did, Disney said, "Thank you, goodbye."
So what you're telling me is that Chewie really doesn't have a son named Lumpy?
That's not canon animore. Life Day is canon,
telling me.
But there's no Lumpy. Lumpy.
He had
a lumpectomy. He's been gone. Chewie had a lumpectomy. So
poor Alex. He's just sitting there like,
sorry,
wait,
buddy.
Chewie had a son named Lumpy?
That was my favorite character in the whole universe.
Same here.
Absolutely. I mean, didn't he just speak to you through the
Well, and in the Star Wars Holiday Band, a lot of people forget this. Jefferson Starship was in the band. It was in the movie.
That was them. Yeah.
They were the holographic band.
Yep. They were.
So you're saying that didn't actually? That's
not none of that. So unless
Jefferson Starship is not actually canon in the Star Wars universe.
You're fired.
Wow.
Yep. Done. And not only, right, here's my gripe, not only do they redo everything, but they're going to try and redo everything again. They're trying to say episodes 8, 9, and 10 were part of the Veil of Shadows. Woo!
That's actually good, though.
Never happened.
What do you mean it never happened?
It didn't happen for good reason. And the good reason is that because 8, 9, and 10 weren't very good.
Well, 8 was good. 8 was fine.
8 was good. 9 just kind of was like, hey, up until like the last, I don't know, half hour, it was pretty good. And then it was just like, you know what? Let's throw it to JJ and let him, figure out how to make 10 work.
Message that Ryan got us in.
But you're telling me like they were just like, yeah, we made all these films and they crushed the box office, and we're just gonna like now a few years later pretend that never happened?
Yep.
Well,
Kathleen Kennedy is on her way out at Lucasfilm,
right?
And so that's where this is going, is because her contract wasn't renewed. There wasn't, to put it, I think Ron said this in an earlier conversation with me, there was not a balance of the force in the Kathleen Kennedy office. A balanced viewpoint as far as how the movies should be made and what should they focus on. So that's one of the reasons why they think they were kind of terrible. But they're trying to get away of a concept planted in the Clone Wars cartoon series called the Veil of the Force, I think it is, or the Veil of Shadows. I forget exactly what it's called. But to try and explain away this alternate universe that 8, 9, and 10 took place in.
For casual fans like myself, all this does is alienate it and make it even more confusing. Like, I'm someone, I've never read the books. I've never really, I watch the movies and it's a popcorn flick. I'm not into it like you are. It's not a life thing. But when you tell me, oh, well, you saw these movies and by the way, they're not part of the real story anymore, but they were when they were originally made. Like, all of a sudden that just turns me off. Like, I'm like, well, what else am I going to, if you bring out a new movie and I really enjoy it, like, are you going to say that didn't exist in a couple of years too?
Star Trek, when they rebooted it, do you remember how they rebooted it?
No, I've never watched Star Trek in my life.
Well, I think what they're trying to do is take a page from the Star Trek example. So when Chris Pine, I think it was Chris Pine, right? Yeah. Took over as Captain Kirk, they had this kind of like a little bit of crossover where there was a space-time dimension and whoa, there's a different timeline now. And so that's how they got away with rebooting the Star Trek franchise away from the original series timeline. It's because they had some fancy things happen, and people bought into it. People went to go see it. People bought the action figures. They bought the merchandise. They went to go see the movie several times. It was very successful until Chekhov got pinned by his Jeep against a garage. And I guess they just got tired of trying to change things around. So I think they're trying to take a page out of that, but I agree with you. At some point, it's going to look like just like a cash grab. And keep this in mind, too. No matter how bad people hated 1, 2, and 3, Lucas stood by his work.
Yep.
It was crap, but he stood by his work.
A lot to unpack there with Star Wars. We'll have to have you back for that. But before we get to the Star Wars track, let's go to the Star Trek Wars, specifically getting to Star Trek. So Star Trek's also going through a similar rebirth. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm enjoying some of the series. I did subscribe to CBS All Access so I can do Picard.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed Picard. I thought it was a well done script. They had Data back there for a couple of episodes. It was great. I have not seen Beneath the Decks or Behind the Decks or whatever the heck that thing's called.
Below the Decks.
Below the Decks. Not suiting my fancy, but I think the Next Generation TV series has aged quite well. Actually, when I'm going back and look at it, considering there's a similar time frame between when the difference between when Next Gen aired and today to when the original series aired and when Next Gen aired, there's about 20 years or so, 20, 30 years. And so I think Next Gen aged much better than the original series. So I'm enjoying it. Bring it on. I hope these franchises never die. They're definitely cultural phenomenons. They're ingrained in our culture. There's references to them left and right. Who doesn't know Live Long and Prosper? Or Beam Me Up, Scotty, which was never phrased by anybody. So I hope they continue.
Drew.
Yes.
Simple, one-word answer. Team Kirk or Team Picard?
Team Janeway.
And not, what's his name from Scott Bakula?
Archer?
Yeah, Captain Archer.
Not Captain Archer. Go Captain Janeway.
Well, there you go.
There you go. See, that's the one they don't ever talk about. No one talks about Captain Janeway or Cisco.
One of my memories of you talked about some early memories of me. One of the memories I remember of you, because I was so fascinated as like a probably 11-year-old kid talking to you about, oh, you worked at Burger King. Oh, that's so cool. And I remember you telling me this story, and I don't know to this day whether you were just like screwing with me or not, but you told me that there was this operation between coworkers of McDonald's and coworkers of Burger King where they would swap burgers and be like, for the workers, they'd be like, hey, yeah, man, I'll hook you up with some McDonald's burgers if you give us some Burger King burgers. Were you screwing with me, or that actually happened?
Several times that happened. Absolutely. So there was a Wendy's on 40 after I'd buy the Burger King. And after I'd leave, I'd go to the Wendy's drive-thru. And for like 3 weeks when I closed, before they changed our procedures, I'd say, all right, guys, I got a Whopper in here. I got a cheeseburger. All right, we'll give you a Dave's Double. We'll give you some fries. Here's a thing of chili. And we'd swap because we were closed and they were still open. And it was great. I did that like 2 or 3 times with them. It was great.
So you did that with Wendy's, not McDonald's.
I didn't do it with McDonald's, but I did it with Wendy's people.
Fast food workers unite.
Here's what happened with McDonald's. So we all need buns, and the restaurant managers all know each other, and so we have used in my Burger King. They had used McDonald's buns for Burger King burgers. I'm not shitting you on that either.
What?
I'm not shitting you.
Let me ask you. I mean, for a layman, if you were to present a McDonald's bun and a Burger King bun, could anyone tell the difference?
You would, because the buns have different diameters. The burger patties are pretty much the same, except Burger King buns always have sesame seeds even on the burgers. Even on the smaller patties, they have sesame seeds. McDonald's don't, except for the Big Mac. Cheeseburgers don't have sesame seeds on them, but the quarter pounders have sesame seeds, and they're not as big as a Whopper. But they're bigger than a burger. So we'd take the quarter pounder buns, and it would make our burgers look huge. Okay, it'd make us look like we had like freaking like dynamite big ass burgers here. And really, it's the same burger. It's just a smaller bun. We swapped once in a while.
Smart tactic Burger King should implement is get smaller buns, makes the burgers look bigger,
Absolutely.
makes people think that they're getting a better deal than they actually are.
The only problem with that is when they wrap a burger with a bigger bun, with a bigger burger patty, is it can break the wrapper easier.
Mm.
So the bun helps protect the meat, if you will.
Well, listen, Drew, we've taken up too much of your time. We need to have you back on. I want to talk more about Burger King, to be honest. But
Let's can talk. That's much more exciting than my current occupation.
but we do want to know, for all the lovely listeners who say, "Oh, I want to know more about Drew Burkley." Where can we find you? How can we hear more about you?
If you want to know more about Drew, put my name into Google and you can look at some of my fascinating presentations on how to deal with explosive children. You can find me at the PCIT International website, where I am a with an agency trainer. Basically, what I do is I help kids learn to listen to their parents. And so the parent gives a command, kid screams and yells, we put him in a chair. I make kids scream for a living is also what I do. And I don't mind it at all. So there's some fascinating things in there. Oh, don't do those vitals things. I mean, you can see it, but it's all just junk for me to pay money towards.
Oh, it says you speak English. I didn't know.
I speak English.
He speaks English.
It's Angrish because I'm angry all the time. No. There's some, if you look at the images, there's some images and some presentations I've done. There's Learning Cafe video YouTube channel we have where I get to introduce all of our fabulous speakers, and you get to learn something about psychology in the process. So the website is utcoe.org. Scroll down to the videos and click on our YouTube channel for excellent introductory videos to a variety of psychological topics, including but not limited to diversity, infant mental health, and working with young children.
Well, Drew, it's been a pleasure. We're looking forward to having you back on the show. And
if we talk about Burger King, I'll tell you about the time I got held up at gunpoint, and then the time a woman jumped on a person's car and threatened to stalk me because I didn't give them onion rings.
Drew, why did we talk at all about psychology? We should have spent the whole time talking about Burger King.
We should have. We absolutely should have. I have so many better Burger King stories about the lights going off, the Coke machine going down,
don't forget the time that like they threw a soda at you or
shit, yeah.
milkshake.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was funny too.
I've got stories like my psychology life. My job is exciting for me. I've got stories that'll make grown men cry about what kids have been through. But it's not very exciting unless you're in psychology. My Burger King stories are much, much more relatable to the average Joe. Absolutely.
Drew, it's been a pleasure. We're really thankful to have you on, and thank you for just sharing your insights about fandom, psychology, and just being an awesome person. Yeah. It's been a pleasure, and we're looking forward to having you back.
That sounds like a plan. Anytime, rich gentlemen, anytime.